poster boards. She marched in with a small group behind her, including 2 of the neighbors who had signed her petition. One of them looked like he regretted it already. The room wasn't full, but enough people had shown up to make it feel official. The county officer presiding over the hearing called everyone to order and invited both parties to speak. Mason stood first. He presented our case in clear, logical steps. He explained the ownership records, the land surveys, the recent drone footage, and even included a side-by-side comparison of the old boundary maps and the current layout of Karen's property. He spoke in calm tones, never once raising his voice or insulting anyone. When he finished, the officer thanked him and called on Karen. That's when the circus began. She launched into a dramatic speech about community values, historical oversight, and the spirit of the mountain. She waved her poster boards around like evidence in a courtroom drama. One showed a picture of my cabin with exaggerated flames drawn around it. Another claimed my lookout tower was a surveillance hub meant to spy on residents. People started murmuring. Mason leaned over and whispered, "Just let her talk. Let her dig." Karen went on and on until finally the officer interrupted and asked her if she had any actual legal documents to support her property claim. She hesitated, shuffled through her papers, and pulled out the same fake HOA charter she had taped to my tree 2 weeks earlier. The officer scanned it, looked at her, and said, "This is not a legal document." The room was silent for a moment. Then someone coughed. Another person snorted. Karen's face flushed deep red, and she slammed the paper onto the table. She accused the county of conspiring against her. She said I had manipulated records and bribed officials. The officer calmly reminded her that all public land records were on file and open for review. Her voice cracked as she tried to speak again, but no one was listening anymore. The hearing ended with the officer stating that the matter would be further reviewed, but preliminary evidence clearly favored my claim. Outside the building, Karen stormed past me without a word. Her supporters trailed behind her, visibly uncomfortable. One of them stopped to apologize under his breath before jogging to catch up. Mason turned to me and said, "She's finished. She just doesn't know it yet." We drove back up the mountain in silence, the kind of silence that hums with momentum. I had the law on my side, the evidence, the patience. She had noise. The following day, I received a formal notice stating that Karen's encroachment was verified and that she had 2 choices. Either begin the process of removing the portion of her deck that extended onto my land or enter a civil negotiation to purchase the parcel legally. Both options came with deadlines and consequences. I hadn't even decided what to do when she knocked on my cabin door the next morning. She looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back in a tight knot, her eyes ringed with stress. She didn't come with flyers or threats, just a single piece of paper in her hand. I opened the door but didn't say a word. She handed it to me and said, "I won't fight this anymore." The paper was an agreement to cease all HOA-related activities on the mountain. No more fake notices, no more meetings, no more flyers. She even included a clause stating she would not set foot on my land again without written permission. I read it slowly, then folded it in half and slipped it into my back pocket. I told her she had one last thing to do. She asked what. I pointed to the sign at the edge of her driveway that still read Mountain View HOA Headquarters. She stared at it for a long moment, then turned around, pulled it from the ground, and carried it back into her garage without another word. The rest of the day was quiet. Too quiet. I went for a walk through the woods and passed a few neighbors who smiled, nodded, or stopped to chat. One of them, a woman named Rose who had never spoken to me before, said thank you. Just that. Thank you. I nodded and kept walking. The trees swayed gently above me, whispering through the leaves. The mountain felt lighter somehow, like it had been holding its breath and was finally exhaling. Back at the cabin, I sat on the porch with a fresh cup of coffee and watched the sunset bleed into the horizon. The tower stood behind me, casting a long shadow over the ridge. Karen hadn't been arrested. She hadn't lost her home. But she had lost something more important to her: control, influence, the illusion of power. And I hadn't raised my voice once. I had just waited, documented, and let the truth do its work. The mountain doesn't rush. It watches. It remembers. And when it moves with purpose. A week passed with no shouting, no drones, and no flyers fluttering from the trees like angry paper wasps. The air had changed. You could feel it in the way birds sang closer to the cabin, how deer wandered without flinching at human presence. Karen's war had ended, or so it seemed. Her silence, once unnerving, now felt like a sigh of defeat. For the first time since I arrived on the mountain, I allowed myself to relax. I fixed the railing on the back deck, stacked firewood for the coming weeks, and even planted a few herbs near the kitchen window. Small things, quiet things, the kind that reminded me why I came here in the first place. But peace is never permanent when someone like Karen is involved. One morning, I went to check the trail cams out of habit more than suspicion. The files looked normal at first. Birds, squirrels, a wandering fox, a pair of hikers along the county easement. But then I found a clip from just after midnight the night before. The image was grainy from the darkness, but it was unmistakably Karen. She wore all black this time, no flashlight, no dog. She crept toward the base of the tower with something in her hands. The footage didn't catch everything, but the sudden lurch of the frame told me she had done something to the camera itself. When I reached the tower that afternoon, I found the lower camera smashed, the lens cracked and wires pulled loose. More than that, the ladder had been vandalized, half the rungs kicked in or pried off. Nails and broken wood were scattered around like she had gone at it with a crowbar. I stood there for a while, not angry, not even shocked, just disappointed. After everything, after the county ruling, after her forced surrender, she still couldn't let go. She couldn't stand to see anything she didn't control. That same afternoon, I drove into town and filed a formal complaint. This time, I didn't just include the footage. I brought the damaged equipment and the splinters of wood. The officer at the desk took one look at it and said, "This isn't just trespassing. This is criminal mischief." By the following morning, Karen was being questioned by deputies. I didn't see it myself, but a neighbor from down the ridge stopped by that evening to drop off some homemade jam and told me the whole thing. Said 2 cars showed up, lights flashing, and Karen came out yelling before one of the officers even knocked. She denied everything, said the footage was doctored, accused me of hacking into her personal drone feed and spying on her family. The deputy, apparently, was not amused. She was fined, served with an official warning, and given a no-contact order. Not a restraining order yet, but enough to keep her off my land and far away from the tower. The news spread faster than wildfire. The very next day, 3 of the neighbors who used to attend her backyard HOA meetings knocked on my door. Not together. Separately. One brought banana bread, another offered to help repair the ladder on the tower, and the third handed me a letter she said Karen had asked her to deliver. I thanked them all and politely refused the letter. I didn't need any more fiction in my life. What surprised me most, though, was how many people started opening up once Karen's grip on the mountain slipped. A retired couple invited me to dinner and told me they had been bullied into attending HOA meetings for years. A younger guy who worked from home said Karen used to show up at his house with noise complaints every time he made a Zoom call after 5. One woman confided that Karen once threatened to report her to child services because her kids left toys in the yard for more than 2 days. As these stories spilled out, the image of Karen as a nuisance evolved into something sharper. She wasn't just an entitled neighbor. She had built a mini-empire of fear and manipulation. And now that it was gone, people were finally breathing again. I hadn't set out to become a symbol or a hero. I just wanted to enjoy the land my uncle left me. But somehow, without meaning to, I had helped unravel a network of control that had poisoned this ridge for years. Still, I knew better than to get comfortable. Karen wasn't the type to give up entirely. The damage to the tower was proof of that. So I took extra steps. reinforced the ladder, upgraded the cameras, installed a solar-powered floodlight at the base, and put up new signs with legal language that made even the boldest trespasser think twice. And then, because I refused to let her dictate the tone of my life, I threw a barbecue. It was nothing extravagant. Just a few neighbors, some burgers and sausages, a cooler full of drinks, and a big table set up near the tower where the view was best. People brought lawn chairs, paper plates, even dessert. Laughter echoed through the trees. Kids ran between the pines. Dogs lounged in the shade. Someone brought a guitar. And for the first time since arriving, the land felt like it belonged to a community, not just a collection of nervous homeowners trapped under one person's thumb. Karen didn't show up, of course. Her blinds stayed closed, her driveway empty. Someone mentioned she had started attending meetings in another town, something about transferring her HOA experience to a new neighborhood board. I didn't care. Let her start fresh somewhere else. Let her print her flyers and flash her clipboard at new faces who hadn't seen the cracks yet. But not here. Not on this mountain. As the sun dipped low and the fire pit flickered to life, I found myself staring out at the trees, thinking of my uncle. He had loved this place in the quiet way only true stewards do. He never posted about it, never tried to change it. He just let it be wild, free, untamed. That was the legacy he passed to me. And though I had been tested, pushed, and threatened, I had defended that legacy without compromising its spirit. Not through force or revenge, but by holding my ground, documenting the truth, and letting time reveal who was right. Later that night, long after the last guest had gone home and the last embers glowed softly in the dark, I climbed the rebuilt tower and looked out over the land. The stars were sharp and brilliant, the kind of sky you only see when the world is far behind you. Down below, Karen's house was dark. No movement, no sound, just shadows and silence. I closed my eyes, breathed in the cool air, and felt something I hadn't felt since I arrived. Resolution. The kind that settles in your bones and stays. The war was over. The mountain was mine again. ChatGPT said. Winter came early that year. A cold front rolled in from the north, dropping snow across the ridge before most trees had even lost their leaves. I spent a few days sealing the windows, chopping firewood, and prepping the cabin for the deep freeze. The silence up here in the snow was different, thicker somehow, like the cold absorbed all the leftover noise from the summer. It suited me just fine. Karen hadn't made a sound in weeks. Her blinds stayed drawn, her car sat unmoved, and her once flashy decorations were gone. No more HOA flyers, no more drones, no more backyard lectures. She had vanished into her own walls like a ghost ashamed to haunt. I had started to think that was the end of it, that maybe she had finally moved on or accepted her place at the edge of the map. But life, especially on this mountain, has a way of tossing one last surprise before closing a chapter. It came in the form of a phone call from a real estate broker in town. A polite man named Calvin who introduced himself and asked if I might be interested in expanding my property. I told him I already owned the whole mountain, and he chuckled softly before clarifying. Karen's property had gone up for private sale. Quietly. No signs posted. No online listings. Just a few hushed calls to select buyers. I asked why she was selling. He hesitated, then said she had mentioned the area had become too hostile for community leadership. I almost laughed. Instead, I asked what the asking price was. It was higher than it should have been for a house with a disputed deck and a bad reputation, but something in me stirred. Not spite. Not revenge. Opportunity. A chance to write the final line myself. I didn't want Karen to know I was buying it. So I made a few calls, worked through a limited liability company my attorney helped me set up, and within 2 weeks, the property was mine. Just like that, the last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I didn't feel triumph or smug satisfaction when I signed the closing documents. I just felt calm. Like the mountain had been holding its breath for years and now could finally exhale. The day the transfer was finalized, Karen packed up her car in the early morning and drove